booth, we've got Neal Westwood. He is a lifelong prepper. He and his wife, Cindy, raised 11 children and have 25 grandchildren. Cindy graduated with her RN and is a certified doula and childbirth educator. Early on, they both trained as EMTs and took classes in wilderness medicine and participated in the CDC's multi-day seminar on biological warfare and terrorism, the military, and public health response. Neal participated in the founding of TERT, Timpanogos Emergency Response Team, and is also a licensed exam class ham radio operator, KG7I. Neal is a master gardener and has served 40 years in the scouting program and has awarded Silver Beaver. He and his wife have taught many preparedness classes and seminars and have participated in numerous preparedness expos and events. They have been in Honduras with remote medical teams. Most recently have served in his ward emergency preparedness specialist as his favorite calling. For the Westwoods, preparedness is not just a periodic activity. Preparedness is a way of life. We want to welcome Neal to our conference and are excited to learn what he has to share with us. Thank you, Neal.
Sounds pretty good when somebody else rattles it off, but it was just live, so.
Can I just make an announcement? Anybody
Yes.
that wants to see what we're filming, pass it on. It will be on Latterdaymedia on YouTube if the speakers are okay with it.
Yep.
We're doing all of it.
The first one and then
Yes.
So is it Latterdaymedia just like that, or .org, or whatever?
Just
Or on
Latterdaymedia.
YouTube, search
the
on-
search bar in YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of good videos. They do a lot of good work, so. Well, good. You're here because you like to drink. And we're used to just watching up to the tap, turn the tap on, and it magically comes out, and it's clean, and it's good, and it's all, unless you're in Lehi and the city water gets, or the pressurized irrigation gets contaminated, right?
Yeah.
We really just expect this water to go on forever, and we don't realize how fragile it is. A good earthquake, our pipes are broken, it'll be weeks or months before it's restored. In 2018, there was a tanker that spilled up Provo Canyon and came within seconds of spilling petroleum into the river, and that river then feeds, and it's the water for virtually all of Salt Lake Valley and a lot of this valley. They did stop it, but if it had got in there, they'd have had to shut down the entire system for weeks to clean the system out. Wow. And what would you do, right? And I'll talk a little bit later. Jeff, that just gave the winter presentation, was in Japan when the earthquake hit. They were without water for 35 days before it got restored. So it gets pretty important. 60-70% of our body is made up of water. In survival preparedness, we talk about the rule of threes. 3 hours or 3 minutes without air, we could die. 3 hours without proper shelter, hypothermia, whatnot, you can die. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So that's the rule of threes. So, water's pretty important. Contaminated water and poor sanitation is the #1 cause of death after a disaster, and that class on preventing the disaster after the disaster is pretty important because it ties right into this. The minimum recommendation is 1 gallon per person per day for 14 days. That doesn't account for cooking and washing and clothes and some other things like that. We say you really ought to have a minimum of 2 gallons per person for at least 14 days, or about 28 gallons per person. And Jeff would tell you you need many hundreds of gallons, because if you're 35 days, it's not going to go very far. We'll talk about that. According to an article that was published in one of the papers here a few years back, how many gallons a day do you think that we use per person in Utah? Any guesses?
50.
Higher. Higher.
Per person?
Per person.
300.
That's better. 2 to 244 gallons a day. That's car washes, that's lawns, that's washing, that's dishwashing, that's everything. So a gallon a day isn't going to go very far. Fortunately, we're not going to do all that. So keep that in mind. So first, let's talk about storage containers. And when we store water, we're looking for containers that have this symbol on it. And most of these here do. Like this is an example. I got to bring it over here so the camera can see it. This is a military container, plastic. But right there on the bottom, you got the HDPE number 2 symbol. Good container. Talk about some that aren't. These plastic jugs, same thing. They have that symbol on the bottom. That's the kind of container you're looking for. There's a lot of good storage mechanisms. The 55-gallon drums that are plastic, very good if you get them clean and whatnot. We'll talk about how to clean those later. There's some things that are not good. So first, good. So 2-liter pop bottle actually is a very, very good storage. We'll talk later about how to clean it. This water is probably 20 years old. Never been opened. Be good as the day it went in. So works really well. Costco water bottles. You know, a case of these under the bed or close to the back door in the car is really handy. This is not this plastic. It's it's PET. And it will break down, so these need rotated at least like every year, year and a half. So drink them up, put another one in, but these are actually good because we grab them and use them all the time, right? All of the examples here are good. An example of something that is not good, milk jugs. Put these on the shelf, year and a half later, you're gonna have wet, soggy stuff on the shelves because these are designed to break down and they won't last. So hang on to those, keep them separate. Glass is actually very good storage, except it breaks easy, but it's not permeable, and with a sealed lid, a lot of preparedness people will take their empty canning jars that are clean, put clean water in, seal them until they need them. And if you've got them stored in boxes and whatnot so they don't break, they're good. New metal. Problem with metal is it can rust, so you get the treated and it'll last a long time, but metal's not a high recommendation, but it can work. So, some example. And of course, there's some giant versions that you can get for kind of long-term permanent. Let's see.
But will those big ones like that have that PD, the 8?
They're the same kind of plastic. Yep, they'll last and they'll go a long time. Just some examples, you know, there's Costco water on the shelf. There's a rack of 2-liter bottles that are stuck aside. You can see those are effective ways. What not to use? Anything that had chemicals in it. For example, this is a nice jug. It's that number 2. Flip it over, smell it. It had some chemicals in it. You can wash and rinse and do all you want. If it had chemicals or other things in it, it just doesn't come out because the plastic's a little permeable and that gets in the plastic and your water will never taste the same. So if it had contaminants like that, you don't want to use it. Very common as you go down to some of these sandwich places, you get pickles in barrels and repurpose those. They can be cleaned out, but they're going to have a little bit of a pickle smell. So if you get used containers, you got to figure out what was in them and can I effectively clean it.
Does the smell or the residual of that affect the water's contamination over time?
If it's not a chemical, probably not. You know, pickle smell is not going to kill you. And you could store it and you could use those for washing instead of drinking. But just mark on it, you know, for washing only. So that you don't have that problem. So, yes, all right. So then how do we clean used containers? How do we clean 2-liter bottles? It's pretty straightforward. You wash it with soap and water, really good, rinse it. And this same instruction's in the back of that handout you have. So you then mix a disinfectant, 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. You want to make sure, we'll talk about this later, but Clorox comes in a lot of flavors now. There are scented flavors that you can put in to make your clothes smell nice. You got to get the old-fashioned unscented version without the extra stuff in it. So double check that. But 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. whether it's a 50-gallon drum or one of these smaller ones, you just put it in there, you roll it around, just move it every so often, and you want to give it about 30 minutes for that to just contact all the surfaces and kill everything off. Then just rinse it out real good and fill it up. If you're using treated city water, Utah State's done tests, like I say, water that's 19, 20 years old, tastes good, fresh as the day it was put in there. We talk about rotating every 6 months. It was every conference you're supposed to dump your water and put new water in. Well, if you've got a clean barrel and clean water, it'll go a long time. They do say to inspect, pop it off, put a flashlight in there, see if there's floaties or any algae or something like that growing. But if it looks like good water, you can go a long time without rotating. If it's not treated city water, then there's a number of ways to treat it we'll talk about. The easiest is just with, again, common bleach, unscented bleach, to put in there. They say, especially like 55-gallon drums, if you put the bleach in and mix it, and then you smell that water, and you can't smell the bleach, you got to put more in. Yes?
There's also another bleach out there that's, you're gonna get confused on, it's not the regular. I think it's the kind that says, like you don't get it on your clothes or something, splashable or something.
It's a different, we'll get to that when we get to other treatments. So you're right. Let me see. I always confuse what I say about it. It's in the chart there. Is it sodium? It is, I'll tell you. You have chlorine dioxide. The problem with bleach, okay, don't be doing that on me. How do I stop that? Don't hibernate. Okay. Restart. Why are we doing that? Okay. It'll come back. Haven't used this projector too much. I've never found a stake center that didn't have a half a dozen of those roll around screens, and this stake center only has one. So, that's even, yeah. Okay, are you going to start back up? Okay, here we go. So I brought this. This is a little side note. I got this, do these medical trips down to Honduras as the ham radio operator. You got to take your communication gear and see what it's like to be out in the middle of nowhere with no power. And the kids out there don't get movies. They're 8-10 hours from town. And the first time I went, the kids had spent hours on my iPhone watching Disney movies in English. And so I took the time to go download in Spanish and convert them, and found this little projector that's got a battery in it. And, so okay, come on. There we go. We want inputs. HDMI, yeah. So I haven't used this for anything but that. So when they told me they didn't have anything, I grabbed my portable screen and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so there's a problem with Clorox. Clorox, after 6 months to a year, loses its effectiveness in the Clorox bottle. That was a surprise to me when I learned that originally, and because I've got Clorox that's been stored several years, and it's basically not effective, or less effective. So if you do the treatment and it doesn't have that slight chlorine smell, they say to do it again. If you're treating non-city water, and it should have.
Percent per year decrease.
Is that what that's good to know. So it means you can still use it, but you may have to use more of it to get there. The other challenge is right now, the company that manufactures Clorox got hit with a massive cyber attack recently. It shut down their manufacturing plants, and they're just getting them back up, and there's going to be a shortage. But there are other things that work, so we'll get to that. So, in a good container with a sealed lid, and then store, you want it in a clean, dark, dry location. Sunlight is the enemy of water, and heat and cold. Changing temperature, freezing. If you're storing your barrels in your garage, for example, there's a chance they're going to freeze. You've got to leave what's called headspace so that it can freeze and expand without busting it open. It's best stored in a place where it won't freeze, but when it comes to locations, sometimes we don't have a lot of choices, so we'll do that. Okay. Now, filling these containers up out of the tap is good. If you're using a hose, I mean, most of us grew up drinking out of the garden hose in the yard. Apparently that's not a good thing. The water sits in the hose and gets bad, you know, and it doesn't nearly flush out, and the metals corrode and whatnot. So they say use those white RV potable water hoses is what you're supposed to hook up to your tap and use to fill these to make sure you don't contaminate it. And then storing water, food storage, anything like that should be stored off the concrete. So put some, you know, pieces of wood or a pallet underneath it to get it up off the concrete. The challenge is that the concrete's a different temperature than the air, and it causes condensation in your food storage and other things, and it breaks it down faster. So again, city water doesn't need to be treated. Otherwise, treat until it has that chlorine smell, and it should store indefinitely, but check it, and it's okay to rotate it. Now, one of the challenges, you know, how do you rotate those big giant barrels? And I brought some examples of some devices. So, like if you need to rotate the water in your 50-gallon drum, there's a company that makes a kit. So this screws into one hole and this screws in the other hole. And then you put your input hose here and a hose out to the drain there. So it puts the clean water goes to the bottom of the barrel, pushes the old out, so you can rotate it without, you know, moving the barrel. Yeah, moving the barrel or whatnot. You know, otherwise you can do things like, you know, let's see. They make these plastic pumps. After you've used it for a while, it's probably going to break. Or you get siphon hoses and stick it in there and start a siphon and get it out. But that device is pretty handy in a big container. So I don't know where I picked that up. Every barrel, you know, you ought to have a barrel, a bung wrench. They're kind of hard to open, so I keep one of these next to every set of barrels. Handy. Let's see. Okay. All right. So talked about storing. We wanted a, you know, clean, dark place. Most of us have it in our unfinished basement, hiding somewhere. You know, the challenge with the unfinished basement is if there's an earthquake, we probably can't get to our water because it's down there. But again, long term, that's still one of the places that's pretty safe because it doesn't get hot and cold. So in our case, I have 5-gallon containers of water out in the garage with the 72-hour kits. Easy to get to, ready to go if you have to do that. And then I have the bigger barrels are stored in the basement or out in my garage basement. The concrete probably isn't going to collapse. So, any questions at this point or thoughts?
Do you have a heat issue in your garage?
No, it doesn't get too hot. I mean, it's shaded. It does get warmer in the summer and cooler in the winter, but it doesn't freeze. In my case, yeah.
Would wrapping those big barrels, like,
With some insulation,
would that,
it would help. Yeah, because water, they say it takes, 1 calorie of energy to change a gram of water 1 degree. I don't remember the unit, but to change it 1 degree, but it takes 100 grams of energy to freeze it. So if you can protect it from going up and down, it'll retain its temperature for quite a while. Yeah.
If you store the white ones outside, it's good to cover them with something black.
Oh, yes.
The blue ones are okay though, right? It's just the white ones.
The water that gets in, you'll get algae, you'll get growth, you'll get all kinds of things. So the dark ones are best to cover it. So then the question is, okay, we've used up our water storage. How do we get more? How do we treat it? What do we do with it? So first thing you do is in the case of an earthquake or other event, Jeff will tell you in that Japan earthquake, you know, after the earthquake, they turned on their water. First it was clear, and then it was sludgy and black. Because those water lines are running right along the sewer lines, and when that gets jiggled up, everything under the sun. So the first thing you want to do is go find your shutoff valve in your basement and turn off the water coming into the house so you don't get contaminated water in the house. Then your whole house pipes are a storage system. You can go to the highest tap in the house and undo it, which will let air in, and then go to the bottom. Like for me, it'd be down in the basement. There's a tap on the bottom of my water tank. I can get it out of the water heater. There's a tap downstairs, and there's probably, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 gallons of water in the pipes between the water heater. And your toilet tank, that's on the back, not in the bowl, should be good water. I'd be inclined to want to treat it or use it for washing if I had to. But it's clean water in a clean tank if you've maintained it well. So, but there's some sources of water you wouldn't think of that in an emergency you want to be ready for. And as I mentioned, Jeff over there, let me find his note. There's talking earlier today. So it was, June 12th, 1978. There was a 7.7 earthquake in Japan. I think he was over there on a mission at the time. 28 days, no power. 35 days without water. 43 days before the gas was restored. And he talks about, they didn't have big storage. 2 days they were out of water. A truck would show up, and you'd get a glass of water and a bowl of rice. You hadn't seen water in 3 days. When they finally, he said, we're 11 blocks away. They said, there's a truck coming in 2 days. He showed up in line to get water. Oh, you got to bring your own container. So they go find a bunch of dirty buckets and come back, and, it was a challenge. We're going to go down to the ocean to bathe because we all can't stand ourselves. You go down there and there's a slime on the water because everybody's going down to the beach to go to the bathroom and get away. Well, let's go to the river. So they go up to the river, we're good flowing stream. Well, the ships upstream had tipped over and whatnot, and there was this fuel, oily sheen on the water. Real challenge. We don't know what we're going to get. Also, I don't remember the Gold King mine in Colorado. There was a big retention pond, 10,000 gallons broke, dumped into the San Juan River, which dumps into southern Utah. That river, they still say you shouldn't drink out of it, you shouldn't swim in it. There's contaminants in the river that are leaching and will leach for 100 years. So, yeah.
Could that happen to us, like Utah Lake and the Provo River?
Good earthquake.
Contamination?
Could have a challenge, yeah. Like I say, you dump an oil tanker in the Provo River, and that's, I think I don't know, Lehi, all Highlands water comes from deep water wells. We're a little different.
Yeah, we're from Orem, Provo.
Yeah, Orem, Provo, I think you get it from the Provo River, it gets treated, goes through a treatment plant, whatnot, and then gets distributed, and then they run a pipe right through the point of the mountain. Through that mountain they've tunneled, because it's downhill, and Salt Lake gets its water out of that too. So if that goes out, there can be a lot of thirsty people. So,
And what'd you say, 3 days?
what's that?
You'll die of thirst in 3 days. If you don't.
3 days, no water. You may make it a little longer, but
That'll be.
if you're in the heat, it's going to be tough. So, good. Okay. So where else can we get water?
I've got a question.
Yeah,
We have a swimming pool. Can you drink swimming pool water?
good question. We're going to talk about that. So, ice and snow melt, rain, clean rivers and streams, non-stagnant ponds, lakes that have in and out ditches. Turns out that pools, hot tubs, water beds are not good sources. They got a lot of chemicals in them. You can use it to wash and whatnot, but they're really difficult to filter. If it was the last choice on earth and you had some of the better filters I'm going to talk about, you can probably get away with it. But just to pick it up and run it through the standard filter, you're going to get sick. So I know, when I was growing up, my dad bought a waterbed for me to sleep on and said, this is our water storage. But turns out it's not a great choice. So, yeah, that's a problem. So that's the issue. So then the question is okay, so what is it that's contaminating the water that we need to treat for? And there's a chart on the second page in your book, in your handout, that I worked on for years, and it's my invention. But every time I look at a filter or some treatment device, I go back to this chart and ask, what is it that it does? And what is it that I need? So the first thing the water's contaminated with, we have these organics, just the stuff that floats, the algae and the sticks and the mud and the crud. So the things that we normally worry about, like when we're backpacking and whatnot, are these organisms. And the size of them matters when you get into filtration. So, we're talking about, parasites. Giardia is a parasite. You hear about Giardia all the time in the mountains, and you got to filter. Bacteria, you got E. coli, botulism, cholera, salmonella, cryptosporidium, the thing that we hear about in the swimming pools. That's all bacteria. And then viruses, of course, we have the hepatitis, the norovirus that hits cruise ships all the time, COVID, polio, smallpox. Those are all viruses. Now, typically, we weren't overly concerned about this in the mountains and whatnot because we're up high and that's not there. In today's world, we get a little more worried about it. But so if we had a filter that took these two out and it's a clean mountain stream, we kind of didn't worry about the rest. Disaster situation, you may have chemicals in the water and pesticides. If your water's in a stream, runs off from agricultural fields and whatnot, those pesticides wash down, they're there. And minerals, sometimes minerals aren't an issue, but there are minerals that are damaging to us. So then we talk about, okay, how do we get that stuff out? And that's where we get into some of the better things. One thing that I was, in a former life, I had an animal operation. We did feed that, chicken guts and offal and that kind of stuff. We're always worried about whether the meats and things that were going into the feed was fresh and good or whether it had been moldy or whatnot. And you think, well, what the heck? It's an animal. Just cook it or sterilize it or kill the bacteria and you should be good, right? But bacteria, when they grow, give off a toxin. And that toxin doesn't get filtered out. So that kind of, bacteria, it's important that, if there's a high bacterial count, you could have other issues, and that needs heavier filtration and whatnot, so in bad water. So, how do we treat? We use three terms: treatment, filtration, and purification. We tend to mix them together, but they actually mean different things. So the first treatment is, again, unscented bleach. And if you look at that chart, unscented bleach will kill all of those organics, the parasites, the viruses, the whatnot. Doesn't take them out of the water, but it kills them.
Well, you don't even know how old the Clorox is when you buy it from the store.
I know.
It may have already lost a lot of its power.
I think they're being conservative, So if you buy it, you can kind of assume that the store wouldn't be selling it if it wasn't reasonably fresh, and you've got 6 months to a year, and then you got that life that's going to decrease. So you trust it, you try. Okay? Chlorine dioxide is a newer. If you go out on Amazon, for example, and search on that, Aquamira makes a product, and it will store forever. And it comes in two parts. You mix the parts together, and it actually oxygenates the water as part of it, and it kills everything as good or better than bleach. And you can store it forever. Aquamira is one of them, but you search and there'll be some water treatment options there. Iodine is the old one that we used to use in scouting. You'd take iodine tablets and whatnot. Iodine is effective, but if you've got thyroid problems, it's not good to use. So you don't see that on the recommendation list hardly ever anymore. Boiling, yeah.
Maybe you're gonna hit on this still, but like again, like I said earlier, if it says splashable on it, it's not gonna work for the chlorine. It's kind of deceptive when you buy your chlorine bleach or your Clorox bleach, it'll say splashable or something on it. Don't get that one.
Yeah, this says sodium hypochlorite, 7.55%. Used to be 5 1/4, I think, but a little stronger.
Non-splashable. If it says non-splashable, don't get that one.
So,
It's deceiving.
yeah, it's the old standard regular stuff we used to get. Boiling will also kill all the. Doesn't take them out, but it kills them. So these are all.
You need to boil the water for it to be safe.
Well, the safe bet is to go 5 minutes at a rolling boil. There's, at higher altitudes, you're supposed to do more or less. I've heard medical doctors show me studies that say that as we bring it to a boil, that's all you got to do. But the recommendations still are many minutes and then let it cool down. So at our altitude, I say 5 minutes, and that covers a pretty broad range. Anybody have a different thought or opinion? But that's pretty good. Amazingly, ultraviolet light So if you have a clear container like this, you go stick it out in the hot, direct sunlight and let it shine on it for, what did I say? It's like 6 hours. Ultraviolet's an effective way to kill things, but it's got to be a clear container and direct sunlight. You can't have shade, you can't have that kind of stuff or it won't work. I know. Any thoughts? You correct me. Here's the experts. So, good. So let's see. Well, the problem with open is things can blow in it and it's not, yeah. Good. It's not one that I would use unless it's my last resort. Ultraviolet lights, they're actually lights you can put inside your water bottle and turn on, and those will kill organics. And I'll show you one in a minute. So, yes, so let's see. Okay, so after treatment, we get into filtration. Filtration is all about the micron size. That chart talks about how different things are different sizes. The tinier the pores in the filter, the longer it takes to filter and the harder it is to filter, but the more it takes out. So we have a lot of choices when it comes to filter. For example, this is the Life Straw, and it's designed, literally you stick it in the water and you just suck up through it. Good personal individual, effective for that. In Honduras, and when I go camping, this Sawyer mini filter, I'll show you, put that back up there. It's just this little guy. But it's designed so it'll screw onto the top of a 2-liter pop bottle, tip it up, squeeze the bottle, it helps force it through faster. In Honduras, they would use a 5-gallon bucket that had a little surgical tube on it plugged into it, and then this dripped into another water container. They just pour the water in the top, and we'd come back, and end of the day, there's 5 gallons of water for our cooking and cleaning. This is what I use in camping. It comes with its own little, fill this up, hook it up, and then squeeze it to get it out. You can also tie it into your camelbacks. This is what I have in all my 72-hour kits. Sawyer mini filter. Yeah, it's, I don't know, I don't have a good place to put this, but they come in a, you buy them in a 4-pack, they get cheaper. Fairly inexpensive, watch for a sale, very effective. And then there are a host of other camping type filters. Just look at the chart, micron size. The real question is, as you look at them, depending on whether they do viruses or not, virtually everybody does bacteria and the parasites, but getting small enough for viruses is the trick. So,
Do any of those actually filter viruses that you've got on this list?
look at your chart.
You got the Berkeley filter.
We'll get there, yeah. So, none that I'm showing, but the MSR Guardian has a 0.02 micron filter, and it'll do it. And there are others out there, and this chart was developed 2 or 3 years ago, and there's new stuff coming out all the time. Just look at what the spec says, look at what they claim. It's that micron size that matters. So, and they'll get sediments, generally. So the last step is purification. This is not only filter, but we kill it, remove it, we do all kinds of things. And generally, like I say, when you're camping and whatnot, you don't need to go to this level, the high level streams. If you just get the organics out, you're going to be good. Of course, that mine disaster, if you're drinking out of the San Juan River, you probably want some of this because it's got those mining telling stuff in it which you didn't want.
What about a nuclear disaster?
Good question, right?
You don't have anything up there on there.
So,
What does,
the answer is yes. We will survive. There'll be a lot of people survive a nuclear because the disaster, the radius is 2, 3, 4 miles, and then you got fallout. The majority of people in Hiroshima survived that weren't in ground zero and lived at an old age. They had thyroid problems and other things, but you're still around, so it does matter. I have filters that, we'll just run through some. So let's see. So this is an example of the Alexa Pure. And basically, inside of this is They have these, call them candle filters. It goes in upside down and then screws in so it can't, and you pour the water in, it has to go through the filter to get into the bottom of the jacket. And that's the same with the Berkey filters. They're expensive. Alexa Pure is less expensive than the others, but they get just about everything. My version of that is this contraption, and this is, so what I have is, there's 4 holes. I put 4 candles in the top here, line it up with the holes, and then I have a filter in the top, get the gunk out, you pour it in here, and then I got 4 of those, because it takes about an hour, hour and a half to get a gallon of water to go through here. It's really slow. And the lower it gets, the slower it goes. So if I can do 4 of them and run it through, and then as a backup, to be safe, this is an ultraviolet light. So after the water's down in here, push the button and it UV zaps it for, that's my large group. And there's a couple of companies out there selling commercial flavors of this that are bucketed and whatnot. You could have to email me.
Using the ultraviolet light, how long does it have to be on?
I'd have to go read the instructions. You have any, James? It's not forever. It's 30 seconds or a minute. I have to go look it up. This actually has a timer. You push the button and it self-times it, does it. I don't have to worry about it. So, but that's my homemade contraption because, again, if I'm doing water for 50 people, I got to have a way to, I can't wait an hour for a gallon. It's not going to get there.
Do you have directions for this?
You could email me and I could.
What's your email?
It's at the back of the chart. The last page, it's Neal, Neal, at westwoodclan.org. So that's the other thing that's very, very effective is distillation. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but this is a device. This is an electric one, so if you still have power, there's a 1 gallon thing that sits under here, but this heats the water up, turns the steam, comes up here. There's an air conditioning unit basically that turns it back to water. It drips down. There's it's an activated charcoal carbon filter in here that it goes through as well. But that's virtually, that removes everything. That gets your chemicals, your minerals, the whole 9 yards.
That works if you got electricity, right?
Yep. And in the handout, there's a link to one that's designed to run over a fire. It's buried in a storage container somewhere. I couldn't bring it out, or I'd have showed it to you. But you can do that as well, and you can do some homemade things.
What's that called? Distillation.
It's a water distiller. Let's see if we've got, pass around here. Yeah, you can look at this one. This is a mega home. We've had this for like 4 years. We use it at home. It'll do 2 or 3 gallons a day. It's not high volume, but yeah.
Worst case scenario, you make your own, right? You just fill the water with your plastic and you dig a
You can, right.
you can't do that, you do that.
You do. You can do that. That's an effective way, and it takes care of everything. 2 caveats. I've just showed you some. Oh, there's the chart. You got it in your book. The EPA has decided that any product that makes the claim that it kills or treats viruses, bacteria, is a pesticide. So when I did the original report of this Seychelles, I didn't cover this one yet. This is the Seychelles Rad Advanced Filter. The church used this for missionaries for years. They used the standard one, which just was biologicals. This will take out chemicals, radiologicals, everything. And it's basically, if I open it, it has a filter in the bottom here. This is what I used in Honduras as well. But you just put whatever water you can find in here and then drink out of it. And it comes through that filter and it takes everything out. So every one of our 72-hour kits has one of these filters in it because you could use it with just about anything, and it's just a good, safe backup.
One thing I've done done is I've bought a whole bunch of coffee filters for free, so if you find water, you can kind of filter it a little bit more before.
To get the crud out, and it's the crud that plugs up the filter. Now, this Sawyer mini filter comes with a tube and a syringe, and you can take good clean water when this starts to stop flowing and hook it up to the other side and back flush it. And this little filter is rated for 100,000 gallons by itself.
What's that one called?
That's the Sawyer mini filter.
Your mini, okay.
It's just, I'm not endorsing any particular product, but the Life Straw is good for 1,000 gallons. You know, it's just personal whatnot. It's amazing what they do. So Sawyer, let's see, yeah, comes out and tells them that because they're making the claim that they get rid of viruses and whatnot, that they're registered, they're supposed to be manufacturing in an EPA-approved facility and go through all this testing. So they've had to take down all the claims about removing the biologicals. But they used to be there, and the test results were there, and I wish I'd have downloaded them years ago and saved them. But they're very effective against that, even though if you go to their website today, it doesn't show it. And then just this year, Berkey has been slapped with the same thing, and they're fighting back. They're suing back, saying, "Hey, this is unfair. You changed your definition and then come after us." But the reality is, if they're coming after these two, anybody that's making that claim is suspect. So just be aware. It doesn't change their effectiveness. But if you go to their website, they won't make the same claim they used to. So we talk about how to treat. If it's clear, unsuspected water, you know, we don't have reason to believe it's full of contaminants, then, you know, you can do the Clorox boil, the basic filtration, and you should be good. It's backpacking kind of stuff. And if we're dealing with suspected water that's bad, this could get into your pools and stuff like that, it's your only choice, then you're going to screen it good. Like you say, coffee filters work, or that screen I've got in here. Get the crud out, and then run it through one of these advanced methods, and you'll be good. One note on distillation. Pesticides, and I forget, there's one other thing. When water first boils, it's the first thing to boil off, and it does vaporize. So the very first water that comes out of a distiller, you want to collect and throw away. That's why it has this charcoal filter, because if there were pesticides in the city water, it would catch that first. But in a survival situation, just throw out the first little bit, and then everything else is going to be good.
Do you have to change your charcoal filter often?
You do. It comes with some, and then you get some, but they last a long time. They're, especially in our water, which doesn't have a lot of, you know, it's distilled water going through it, so it doesn't get plugged up easy. So, yeah, so that's the yucky stuff. How are we doing on time? I haven't timed this, so I'm not sure where I'm. Okay, we're doing good. We're getting there. Okay, there's always new products coming out. I see this one popping up on Facebook all the time. Life Straw, the same company that makes that, now makes this Life Straw Community. And it's a 0.2 micron, so it handles most viruses. There's some really tiny ones that might not catch. Doesn't do chemicals and pesticides, but it's like $300 or $400, and you can put 5 gallons of water in it and filter out, not have to mess with a bunch of homemade stuff, unless you're looking for the extra filtration. There's new products coming out all the time, so watch for that. And just look at the chart, compare it to the chart, and decide if it's going to be good enough.
Very, very good. Thanks for the chart.
Yeah. So my personal recommendations, and I'll tell you where they vary, but you want at least 3 gallons per person ready to go for your 72-hour kits. That, like I say, is stored in the garage on a rack with the kits that are easy to get to, ready to go. Then I've got at least 28 gallons per person for longer term. If you got a neighbor with a well, that would be good. Jeff doesn't store 28 gallons. He thousands of gallons of water because he's been in Japan when it was 35 days. So he's saying, 28 gallons isn't going to go very far.
So say I happened to be at Lowe's the other day, and they've got multi-thousand gallon water containers.
Big giant ones.
Yeah.
The people that go all out, those big tall ones you see, you can actually plumb into your house's plumbing so that it puts water in and takes it off the top. If the water shuts off, the container's full, so you got a 1,000-gallon tank that's always being refreshed and ready to go. It's not movable anyway, but it's there ready to go. You can get really creative in this environment. I have a system, your barrels are sitting up and it's really hard to get water out. Well, they make racks where you can stack 2 or 3 barrels and then the hose is hooked together and you get a bucket or whatever under the bottom one. So you just open the spigot and it's easier to fill. There's, you can spend as much money as you want. So, yeah.
So you can collect the rainwater, I don't know how safe rainwater is, probably not purified.
You know what's been in the air.
Better than nothing, and you want to filter it, because if you're collecting it off your roof and rain gutters, you're picking up whatever's in the asphalt shingles and coming down and getting in things.
Or plastic.
Yeah, you can put up big sheets of plastic and collect it, and that's probably better because if the plastic's clean. Snow, you can gather clean snow and melt it. You still want to filter it. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that. So 28 gallons, I have that Sawyer mini filter and this Seychelles Rad Advanced in every one of my 72-hour kits, because you can put just about anything in there and drink it if you have to. And then for household regeneration, a larger system that could do some volume. A little personal plug, there's a little website I've been working on. There's no money behind it, but miprepared.org. It leads you through questions in these 8 different areas, short, intermediate, long-term. It's kind of a self-assessment. And then the colors change based on your answer, and there's a way to print it out, give you an idea of what you're missing or you might want to do. It's still in development, but it's usable.
It's on your website.
That's miprepared.org. That's the site you might find interesting. And then, of course, bereadyutah.gov. There's tons of information. Videos. You've got a copy of one of the handouts that I printed there. They've got handouts on everything under the sun. It's very good, very sound, safe. A lot of this comes from that. The CDC, if you search on CDC water treatment, they have several pages of links of everything under the sun. Red Cross water safety, the same thing. That's where you'll get these instructions on, this is the back of your list that teach you how to clean and filter and whatnot. So that's helpful. I think that is it. It is. Good. Okay. That's a fast run. Comments, suggestions?
Where do you buy the filters that you put in your homemade?
I buy the Alexa Pure filter, is what I do. It's the same filter that's in this. I think you can get them in a 2-pack or whatnot, and I watch for a sale because they're expensive. But they do get everything out. The Berkeys are even twice that, so I went with the other one. But any other thoughts or comments or suggestions? Experiences? Well, good. Thank you for coming. And
We would have a lot more questions after the disaster.
yeah,
We would have a better idea of what we really needed.
good.
Having not gone through it yet, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, now's the time. Now do the you go to James' class on sanitation.
Can you go back 2 slides? I want to take a picture of that.
Okay, there you go.
I tried looking it up. Maybe it's case sensitive.
It isn't, but it's .org.
I tried going to it and I was getting this.
You did. That's a dot. I don't know why it went org.cutset.com. That's the problem. I had to do that once. You got to get to the. Somebody else is doing the. MyPrepared.org. Okay, we're doing a Google search. I don't want. There you go.
There we go.
So then it'll walk you through. There's a lot of questions, but.
That's awesome.
And so if you look, click on one of them, it doesn't matter, short term something. The questions are just yes, no question, and it remembers your questions. They don't really matter, except for it'll print out what you answered. This is what matters. This changes the color circle. So after you look at the question, you say, okay, having looked at those questions, do I think I'm prepared, somewhat prepared, not prepared? And then it updates the colors. And then on that home page, down at the bottom, there's a print summary. Go ahead and click on it. That'll dump out the questions and tell you what you answered, and you can print that out. And
That's really cool.
I'm open to suggestions on questions or changes. Yeah,
Are you the
thank you.
developer of this?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was an idea I had. I'm trying to help get people to think about things, and had to figure out a way to organize it, you know.
Yeah.
So any suggestions?
Would you be okay if the Disaster Discovery Center utilizes your website?
No, not at all. Be happy to have them.
Which, as a point, by the way, if you're interested, they are looking for additional board members for the Disaster Discovery Center.
Okay. I'm not sure what that involves, but I'd be interested in hearing about it. So,
I'll
yeah.
talk to you some more afterwards.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to have you look at the questions and say, okay, we got to tweak that one because it doesn't match this or that or the other. And
I'm on the board of directors myself.
Cool.
For that, and it's
I'd like to know, like, where would I search for something like this?
it's a
Okay.
We have owned a barrel for a really long time, and we have never filled it because,
You don't know what you're going to do once it's full.
yeah. And so all of this is great, and so I'm like, okay, if we had some tools,
Yeah, let's see. Okay.
or I'm like, even if it was like, oh, just search
All
on
right.
Amazon for these things.
That's the
Oh,
one
okay.
for recycling the water, and I bought this years ago, but you could search on it.
Like I went to one, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago.
And this pump the problem is it's a plastic pump. I bet it breaks within.
But I mean, to get me started, right?
Yeah.
Like on something.
Siphon pump. You know what? I would go to like any of the emergency preparedness places.
Yeah.
Search on drum pumps.
Okay. I will.
So that's not very helpful. It says it's a siphon pump.
That's okay. A drum pump, like I wouldn't even know what to look for.
Yeah.
So,
Siphon hoses. It's just, yeah.
okay. Thank you so much. For
Thank you. Good.
Really appreciate it.
Good. Well,
That's nice. I just have one fast question.
Sure.
If this is always flowing, will it be fine? Because I know these things can get mold growing inside
So-
these things.
you're using them a lot.
If you're
So,
always using it.
yeah, I mean, you can clean it out, but you're putting clean water, disinfected.
But if it sat in there for a while, would it?
Technically, it shouldn't. It's clean water, right? You can take it apart.
Okay, thank you.
That's cool.
Yeah. You know, I searched all over to find the bits and pieces.
The holes in the bottom.
And they match up with the holes there.
Where did you even find like these bucket tops?
So these are standard U-line company sells them. I'm going to unscrew that. Come on. Finding the correct sizes was the tricky part. This is extra. I mean, theoretically, those filters, unless they leak, will get them.
You're kind of just making a big turkey.
It is a big Berkey.
And so you
4 candles.
You can put the little filters in
Yeah.
and so it's kind of the same.
It's a high volume version. That, you know, Life Straw doesn't. More companies are going to come out with stuff like there's a commercial company they're doing the same thing. I bought one to kind of look at how it was built. They're drilling the holes and doing all the work for you.
And do you remember where you got your UV filter?
It's been 2 or 3 years. I bought stuff from all over, and it's wrong sizes, and to finally make a couple of them. But the concept is pretty straightforward.
Now, the floor holes in there is to.
So what happens
share
is
the water.
those black candles
Yes.
poke out,
Oh, okay.
and the water goes through and comes out those nipples that poke out. So those nipples have to line
Have
up.
to line up with those holes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just, the concept is having 4 of them
Right.
instead of 1. I mean, this will take up to 3,
Yeah.
but there's not enough water to get anywhere, so.
No, it's not. And if you had a big family, then you're really limited.
Yeah,
That,
so,
even though it's good.
I mean,
I have a question for you.
yeah.
So, these are actually also PET. And you made
They're
a comment
thicker.
about this one.
For some reason, they last longer.
Okay, so it's probably just the thinness of
It is.
cheap things.
If you buy,
Getting thinner every day, right?
if you buy the more expensive water, bottled water, it comes in a heavier, and they'll store fine
Okay.
for
'Cause
a long time. Yeah,
I've heard kind of similar things with, well, I heard that these, you can buy them and they last forever too, but,
they claim they break down, yeah.
because
So-
this is the same plastic as it.
It is, it's just a lot less of it.
And,
I
yeah,
use one at work and refill it, and after 6 months, the creases start to break.
oh, really? Okay.
But that's just standard 2-liter bottle, it just,
There.
that's thicker. That one would be okay.
That one I like to use just for my everyday.
Yeah, and that's good, yeah. So, you're welcome.